Alright folks, in today's video I'm going to share 10 of my favorite JRPGs for the Nintendo DS. That's right, I'm taking a trip down the nostalgia lane where handheld consoles like the Nintendo DS reign supreme. It is no secret that the Nintendo DS was a beast of a console with plenty of awesome games, so I thought, hey, why not just share my top 10 favorite JRPGs for the Nintendo DS. But before I continue further, I do want to say that this is just my personal list, and if you have other JRPGs you want to highlight, then let me know in the comment section. Alright, first up we have Super Robot Taisen, OG Saga, Endless Frontier. Now Endless Frontier is quite a weird crossover game between Super Robot Wars, which I don't know much about, and Monolith Soft's games like Xenosaga and Namco Cross Capcom. Endless Frontier takes place in a universe consisting of different dimensions or worlds. The game follows a gunslinging bounty hunter named Haken Browning and his crew who are on a quest to stop the evil threat affecting the multiverse. To be honest, the story was somewhat forgettable, and the main reason why I have this game on this list is because of its gameplay, in particular when it comes to combat. For those wondering, Endless Frontier is a turn-based RPG where each active party members fight individually. The objective is to juggle the enemy as much as possible by stringing together some awesome looking combos. Now the concept of this battle system might sound weird, but it was surprisingly addictive. I remember replaying this game multiple times just for the combat system alone. Now Endless Frontier might not be the best RPG for the Nintendo DS, but it sure had an addictive gameplay. At number 9 we have Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. Now this game right here is a very interesting title within the Kingdom Hearts family. It takes place right after the end of Kingdom Hearts 1, and it follows Roxas's daily life as the 13th member of the Organization 13. As Roxas, you take on daily missions across various Kingdom Hearts worlds where you have to fight plenty of heartless creatures in order to help the organization discover the secret of the heart. What I like about this game is that you get to learn more about Roxas as a character as well as the other members of the organization. Although I do have to say that most of these missions that you embark on are very repetitive and quite tedious at times, and what kept me going was the story of Roxas and his friends Axel and Xion. It might not be the best Kingdom Hearts game in terms of gameplay, although from a story and character perspective, it might be one of my favorite in the franchise. Alright, next up we have Final Fantasy Tactics A2. Now whenever you mention Final Fantasy Tactics, you either think of the original Final Fantasy Tactics or Final Fantasy Tactics Advance on the GBA. But there was another Tactics game for the Nintendo DS, which funny enough was my first introduction to the Tactics series. Now Tactics A2 has quite a similar story to Tactics Advance on the GBA. You play as a young boy named Luso who is transported to the world of Ivalice through a magical book he found in a library. Once transported to Ivalice, you join a clan where you take on various missions as well as recruit new members. Yes, the story of Tactics A2 might not be the best in the Tactics series, but what kept me returning was the addictive gameplay. It has a deep combat system with plenty of jobs to play around with, overall a really fun strategy JRPG set in probably one of the best Final Fantasy world known as Ivalice. Speaking of Final Fantasy, at number 7 we have Final Fantasy IV. Now this game right here is a remake of the classic Final Fantasy IV with full-blown 3D graphics as well as voice acting during certain cutscenes. The game takes place in a medieval fantasy setting and it follows a dark knight named Cecil who is conflicted about his bloodstained past. You will set off on a journey to uncover the truth and stop the evil sorcerer Golbez. Now this remake was my first introduction to Final Fantasy IV, and I remember loving Cecil's character development, in particular when he goes from a dark knight and becomes a paladin. Final Fantasy IV was also the Final Fantasy game that introduced the active time battle system, and out of all the versions of Final Fantasy IV, I believe the DS remake is by far the hardest. All around a fun and classic Final Fantasy experience on the Nintendo DS. At number 6 we have Pokémon HeartGold and SoulSilver. Now there are a lot of great Pokémon games on the Nintendo DS and it was quite hard to pick just one. But out of all of them I had to go with Pokémon HeartGold and SoulSilver. To me it is the perfect remake of Gold and Silver with updated graphics as well as some Gen 4 features. It is still of course your typical Pokémon game, but what I like about HeartGold and SoulSilver is that it had a lot of content, and if I'm not mistaken, it is still the only Pokémon game to feature 2 regions, Johto and Kanto. I remember spending countless hours doing online battling, trading, collecting Pokémons, and it is still to this day one of the best Pokémon game out there. Next up we have Dragon Quest V. Now there are plenty of Dragon Quest games for the Nintendo DS, and sadly I have not played them all. Although out of the few Dragon Quest games that I've played, I do find Dragon Quest V to be one of the best, in particular when it comes to the story. Now the story is a tale of a man's life from childhood to adulthood, and it mostly centered around family. It is probably the most emotional driven story out of all the Dragon Quest games that I've played. Now when it comes to the gameplay, it is still your traditional Dragon Quest game with a good old classic turn-based combat system. Although Dragon Quest V was the game that sort of introduced monster taming, or monster recruitment as it is called, and personally I'm easily persuaded whenever you slap on a monster taming feature. Overall a fantastic Dragon Quest game that has aged gracefully. At number 4 we have Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey. Now Strange Journey is a very interesting title within the SMT family. It is technically not a numbered mainline SMT game, but it sure felt like it whenever I was playing Strange Journey. In Strange Journey, you play as an unnamed soldier who is tasked to investigate the mysterious black hole that has appeared in Antarctica. This black hole is of course filled with demons, which is causing a threat to the human world. What I like about Strange Journey is that it has a dark sci-fi setting, which is quite unique when it comes to the SMT franchise. It has an interesting story about the flaws of humanity, and it also has a very addictive gameplay. It is a brutal dungeon crawler, although a rewarding game whenever you overcome those challenges. At number 3 we have Chrono Trigger. That's right, the Nintendo DS port of Chrono Trigger is arguably the best version of Chrono Trigger. Not only that, but it was also my first introduction to Chrono Trigger. Now Chrono Trigger is a classic JRPG where you adventure through time in order to save the world from destruction. I truly believe it has withstood the test of time as a JRPG. Both the story and the gameplay still holds up to this day, and I totally understand why many consider this game to be one of the best JRPGs out there. Now the Nintendo DS port of Chrono Trigger was more than just your typical port. They added new features and content, including a 13th ending that would bridge the gap between Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross. Overall a timeless JRPG and one of the greatest games out there. At number 2 we have The World Ends With You. Now here we have a very unique JRPG and probably one of the best JRPGs to utilize the dual screens on the Nintendo DS. The World Ends With You takes place in Shibuya, and it follows an antisocial teenager named Niku who has to participate in a death game called the Reaper's Game, in which contestants have to complete daily missions in order to stay alive. You will mainly go up against creatures called Noise, and you fight this creature in a very unique way. As you guys can see, the combat system utilizes both screens. You control 2 characters simultaneously, the main character on the bottom screen and your corresponding partner on the top screen. On the bottom screen you use the touchscreen to perform various actions, and you use the D-pad for your partner on the top screen. It definitely took a while to wrap my head around the combat system, but once I got used to it, it became one of my favorites on the Nintendo DS. It has an interesting story centered around life and death, and it is by far one of the best games to utilize the features of the Nintendo DS. At number 1 we have Radiant Historia. Now Radiant Historia is a very interesting JRPG centered around time traveling. You play as a special agent named Stock who has been granted a mysterious book called the White Chronicles that gives the user the ability to travel through time. With this ability you will travel back and forth through key events as well as jump between timelines in order to stop an impending doom. What I really like about this game is that you explore different scenarios and you get to use what you've learned through those key events to create new outcomes. Besides having an interesting time traveling concept, Radiant Historia is also known for its unique take when it comes to the turn-based combat system. For those wondering, Radiant Historia has a grid-based battle system, where it's all about chaining combos with your party members and pushing the enemies around on a 3x3 grid. The combat might look weird to some people, but it is easy to learn. I loved planning my moves and chaining my attacks with my party members, and it is easily one of my favorite turn-based battle systems out there. All around a fantastic JRPG that can stand toe-to-toe with many modern JRPGs out there. And there we go, 10 of my favorite JRPGs on the Nintendo DS. If you have other JRPGs you want to highlight, then let me know in the comment section. Thank you for watching this video. Other videos on RPGs and sometimes anime related stuff. Consider subscribing if you're interested. More videos are coming, so stay safe, and I'll hopefully see you guys next time.